Go ahead and start before anything happens. Bismillah, inna alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh, wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyati a'malina, man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lah, wa man yudlil fala hadiya lah, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. So alhamdulillah, we're continuing in the book Ad-Durar ul-Bahiyyah feel-Masaa'il il-Fiqhiyyah by Al-Imam Muhammad ibn Alee Ash-Shawkaanee, who was from, where was Imam Ash-Shawkaanee from? He was from Yemen. Where was he from in Yemen? Does anyone remember what we said? No, not Babel, Yemen. He grew up in Sana'a, but he was originally from a place called Al-Shawkaanee. Al-Shawkaanee is a suburb, a village outside of Sana'a, but he was raised in Sana'a. But he was originally born in Al-Shawkaanee. That's why he's known as Al-Imam Ash-Shawkaanee, Muhammad ibn Alee Ash-Shawkaanee. So last week we completed the section Bab al-Miyah, the section on the types of water, and after that we talked about An-Najaasaat, Bab al-Najaasaat. What are the things that are impure? In reference to water, this is just a quick review. The Sheikh said that water has three categories. It has wasfain. He says it has two descriptions, I should say, two characteristics about it. That in itself, when you talk about water in its natural state, the natural way that water is, it has two specific characteristics about with it that are important when we talk about fiqh. And what are those characteristics? It is tahir wa mutahhir. Tahir means water in itself, in its natural state, it is considered something that is pure. And mutahhir means that it is something that can be used to purify or cleanse other things as well. So these are the two natural characteristics of water. Okay? And he said nothing removes these characteristics from water except what?
It changes in three different ways: color, smell,
and taste. Except for three characteristics of the water, any one of them. It doesn't have to be all three. Any one of them of these characteristics of the water changes, but changes due to what? There's something a very key condition he said here. He said that if it changes from a Najaasaat, if impurities are added to water, if any impurity is added to water, anything that's considered impure, and we talked about the impurities, we'll get to that, but if anything that is impure is added to the water, and it changes the lawn, the color of the water, or the rih, the odor of the water, or the ta'am, the taste of the water, that makes that water no longer considered tahir mutahhir. It is no longer pure, and it can no longer be used to clean something else. Okay? If it is something of the najasat, if something of the impurities is added to it. Okay? So then, okay, what if something that is not impure is added to the water? Okay. What is that?
If it cannot be called water anymore, then you cannot use it anymore.
Right.
But if it's still called water, then I can.
Right. So he said, if also the second thing that will take water away from its two natural characteristics is if something that is pure is added to the water. It could be something that's pure. I think is that coming from the other theater? I think it's something from the other program. So for example, we gave the example, like for example, tea, chai. Okay, if you add tea leaves or a tea bag, Lipton or whatever, to some water, it changes the color of the water. Okay, the water becomes brown, or could be maybe red, depending on what type of green tea, depending on what type of tea you use. Okay, but the water color will change. Okay, the taste of the water will change. The water will have a taste. And even the tea may even have a scent, a odor, a fragrance to it. Okay. So all of the characteristics of the tea, of that water has changed. But the thing that makes it where we cannot use that water to cleanse something else is that we no longer call it water. We call it tea. It's not called water anymore. Same if you want to say Tang. Have you all heard of tang? Tang is like a powder. It's usually orange, but I hear they have different flavors now. You sprinkle it in the water, and it has it has sugar in it, so it sweetens the water. The water changes orange, turns orange in its color, and it may even smell like orange or fruity flavor or whatever, depending upon what flavor tang you're using. But that's no longer, we cannot use that to make wudu or to make ghusl or to wash clothes or clean something, right? Because it's no longer considered water anymore. Customarily, we call it tang now, or Kool-Aid or something like this, or lemonade. It's no longer called water. So because of that, it's no longer, it still would be considered tahir. It's still pure in itself, in its nature, but it's no longer mutahhir, meaning you can no longer use it to clean something else. You cannot use it to purify yourself, or like this. You can drink it, it's halal, it's tahir, but you can't use it to wash or bathe or make wudu with, all right? So this is talking about some things we talked about regarding water. In reference to An-Najaasaat, who remembers what are An-Najaasaat, the things that the Shaykh said, Al-Imam Ash-Shawkaanee, that he said are of the impurities? What are some of the Najaasaat, things that are impure? Feces, we say gha'it in Arabic. Feces, okay, human feces. All right, what else? What else is impure? Bowl.
Two kinds of impurity. One, it is regarding the religion, and another that does not affect the religion, like the dog is alive with the dog.
Okay. Now that is, well, the saliva of the dog is still, it affects religiously. I think what you're talking about is when we went into the discussion of what breaks wudu.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a difference between what breaks wudu and An-Najaasaat. The things that break wudu, we're going to get to that. They're called nawaqid al-wudu, the things that break wudu.
Yeah.
That is something different than An-Najaasaat. What we're talking about right now are An-Najaasaat. They're not things that break wudu. These are things that just, in their nature, they're impure, meaning you have to remove them from your clothing if they get on your clothes. You have to remove them from your body if it gets on your body. And you have to remove it from the place of prayer if you're going to pray in that place before you can perform acts of worship. Okay? It doesn't break the wudu. These aren't nawaqid al-wudu. But these are things that your prayer is not valid if you pray with them on your clothing, on your body, or in the place of the prayer. You understand? They have to be washed and removed before you can pray in that area or in that garment, etc. All right? Or, like I said, wash or remove. You can either wash it and then pray, or you can just remove it and put on another shirt and pray. But you don't have to make wudu over it. They don't break wudu. All right? These aren't nawaqid al-wudu. You all understand the difference? Okay. So now I want to leave nawaqid al-wudu, the things that break wudu. We're not talking about that. We're talking about najasat, the things that are in themselves, in the nature of the substances, they are not clean ritually. Okay. The first he said is gha'it, human feces. Okay. Defecation, boo-boo. All right, whatever, you can say to the little baby, boo-boo, poo-poo, this is impure, regardless of if it came from a man or a woman or an adult or a child. It does not matter. Human feces is impure. It's najis, all right? What's another one that he mentioned? Urine, we say baul insan, the urine of the human being. Is the urine of all humans min an-najasat, from the impurities? What's the exception? If it's a baby boy. All right, ad-dukur min al-atfal. Why? What's the dalil? What's the evidence that the urine of a baby boy, that if he's actually, and she added that's radi', he has to be radi', meaning radi' means he's of the age of breastfeeding. He's breastfeeding from his mother still. Okay, so we're talking about an infant. We're not talking about a 3-year-old, or 4-year-old, 5-year-old. We're talking about 2 years old or less. And the child is breastfeeding from his mother still, and it's a boy. What's the dalil though? What's the proof that this is not najisun min an-najasat, and an impurity from the impurities? What did we say? We mentioned an evidence for it. The hadith of the Prophet. So what happened? What was the situation? The hadith. And if it's so, he said the Prophet also mentioned that if the urine of a male infant gets on the garment, then he just said you sprinkle some water on it, it's fine. But he said if it's a girl, untha, okay, min al-inath, girls who are females, what did he say about their urine if it gets on the garment or clothes or the cloth? He said it must be washed. It must be thoroughly washed, just like with an adult, any male or female. Okay, all right. Someone asked, I think Abu Sami asked, what was the reason for that? The hikmah, wisdom behind that. I said I don't know, and I still don't know. So So that's still my answer today. I didn't get a chance to look for any qawl, any statement. Nothing was mentioned. Our teacher, when I was in Yemen and studying this book, he didn't mention anything about it. And Imam Ash-Shawkaanee in Ad-Durar ul-Bahiyyah, I don't see him mentioning it. I didn't see him mentioning anything about it. So I would have to look further to see if there are any other aqwal, any other statements of any other scholars of the Salaf of the past who said anything about the hikmah, the wisdom behind why is it that the urine of a male child that's breastfeeding just is not of the impurities. You just sprinkle it with water and it's fine. It doesn't have to be washed. Okay, ghasl, we say. It doesn't have to undergo ghasl. All right. But so anyway, those are two. What else did we mention? You mentioned one. What did you say? The saliva of a dog. Lu'ab kelb. The saliva of a dog, okay, is considered an impurity that must be washed off. What's the evidence for it? Right. The Prophet ﷺ said if a dog licks out of the container, it must be washed, as she said, 7 times. And in another narration he said an eighth time it must be washed with dirt, turab, which means dirt. Okay. All right. But for him to say it must be washed, that's showing that it's not pure. It's an impurity. All right. It's najis. It's impure. All right. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. What else? What type of blood? Menstrual blood. Dam al-hayd. You're talking about nifas blood. So this one blood, just bleeding, we'll say from that comes from the private part of the woman, as a part of a natural thing that Allah has decreed for the daughters of Adam. This blood is considered impure. It must be washed. It must be removed. It must be washed off before one can pray in that garment, if it's in the garment, etc. like this. All right. What else? Pig meat. Lahm al-khanzir. Lahm al-khanzir. Allah mentions that it's impure in the Quran. This is from a verse of the Quran. All right. What else? There's one other thing. Very good. Dung, we say. Roth in Arabic, it means dung. Dung is animal waste, animal feces, like, camel or dog or cat or, any feces that comes from an animal. All of that is impure, all right? It's considered impure, all right? Okay, so what did the Sheikh say about things other than that? Because there are some things other than that people mention. Like, for example, alcohol, wine, like liquor, okay? Is that impure? He made a statement. He said, وَفِيمَا عَدَى ذَلِكَ خِلَافٌ. وَفِيمَا عَدَى ذَلِكَ خِلَافٌ. This means regarding everything else other than what we've just mentioned just now, everything else, he said, the scholars don't agree about. There's a difference of opinion about it. Meaning everything that we've mentioned, there's ijma'. Ijma' means it's consensus. No, لا يوجد فيه خلاف, لا خلاف فيه. يعني لا يختلف فيه أهل العلم, العلماء. The scholars of the past, going back to the Sahaba, didn't differ about these things that we've mentioned. All those things that we've just mentioned are impure, no doubt. Okay. Other things that have been mentioned, for example, like wine, alcohol, there's a difference of opinion about it. One of the things, we didn't mention this in detail last week, but I'll tell you. He said regarding the alcohol, Najaasaat al-Khamr, he says it's ma'nawiyya. Ma'nawiyya, Najaasaat al-Khamr, ma'nawiyya. Ma'nawiyya means it's impure, but not physically impure. It's considered an impurity in reference to figuratively. Not literally pure, but figuratively. Do you all understand what figuratively means? Literally means that it's really impure, just like feces, menstrual blood. It's literally in itself, it's impure. But we say in Arabic haqiqi, okay? Ma'anawi in Arabic means figuratively, meaning that we consider it something nasty, but in itself it's not literally impure. It's just disgusting we consider it something nasty figuratively, not literally. Okay, you understand? And he said, based upon the verse in the Quran where Allah says, إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ وَالْأَنْصَابُ وَالْأَزْلَامُ رِجْسٌ. Allah says, verily alcohol and maisir is gambling, and idols that upon which things are sacrificed to false gods, and casting lots and like this, games of chance. He said this is, Allah says rijsun. Rijs means impure. But it doesn't mean it's physically impure. It just means this is something that's something that is disgusting because it's from shaitan and it's evil. Not that it physically is impure. Like the idol that, the idol or the statues or the altar that where they slaughter. That thing itself, the stone slab or whatever, is not impure physically. But it's impure in reference to the deen, in reference to its meaning, in reference to this is haram. This is something that Allah does not like for us. But not, so we call that ma'anawi in Arabic. Ma'anawi. If it was really physically impure, meaning that it will defile you, then we say this najasa is haqiqiyyah. It's literally really impure in its nature, in itself, not just figuratively. Okay? I hope you all understand the difference. So this is one thing that he said. Also, najasatul mushrik. What about the disbelievers? Some people say disbelievers are not pure, based upon a verse in the Quran where Allah says, al-mushrikun, innama al-mushrikun najisun. Allah says, verily the disbelievers are najisun, impure. It's in the Quran. Does it mean that if you shake hands with a non-Muslim, that you have to go wash your hands before you can make salat? No, because it's not literal. He said, najasatul mushrik ma'nawiyya. Same thing. It's figurative, not literal. Okay? And he said the proof for it is that the Prophet ﷺ allowed non-Muslims to stay in the masjid in Medina. If they were impure, he would not have let them into the masjid. Okay? Also, he said the Prophet allowed the Muslims to make wudu from the containers of the non-Muslims. Allah also allowed us to eat from their animals that they slaughter. This is in the Quran. And Allah allows us to eat from their food that they prepare. Okay, as long as it's not things that Allah has made forbidden for us, like alcohol and pork or something like this. That's proof, he said, that they're not physically considered impure. When Allah says, إِنَّمَا الْمُشْرِكُونَ نَجِسٌ, verily the disbelievers are impure, he's saying in reference to their shirk. Their practice of shirk is something that is evil and is disdained. Okay? Not that they physically are nasty. If you touch them, you have to go wash your hand or something like that. All right? You all understand? Okay. So, tayyib. So these are some of the things we mentioned last week. There's no evidence for it. There's no evidence for vomit being impure. Okay, and like I said, some things to us we may say that that's nasty, and you want to wash it off. That's fine. And we're not saying you shouldn't wash it off, but we're not. But to say it's najisun min an-Najaasaat, this means that technically in Islamic jurisprudence and the Sharia, the law of Allah, that Allah either said it in the Quran or there's an authentic hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said this thing must be removed before you can pray. Or this thing he called it, this is filthy, it must be removed religiously. It must be something that you cannot perform the ritual acts of worship with this on your clothing or your body or in the place where you're going to pray. Okay? Other things we may consider it nasty. Okay? If so a person may spit, you may consider that nasty. Oh, he spit, yuck, he spit. That's gross. But is that najis? No. It's not the same as urine or feces. All right? So if you pray and you have some saliva on you, or what people call phlegm, I'm sorry to make the sound, but I just want to make sure you all know what I'm talking about. It's nasty to us. Like, ugh. But if it's on you, does it make your prayer invalid? No. It doesn't invalidate your prayer because Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, have not declared it to be of an impurity that prevents you from your prayer from being accepted in that. Okay, you understand? We don't have a command from the Sharia that it must be washed away. Okay, you understand? So you have to separate between those things. Culturally, those things we consider disliked, and those things that are like now technically in the law of the religion are considered invalidators of prayer if it's on you or something like that, that it's impure. So we're going to go ahead to our subjects today. This was just a review from last week, and I passed out some of those handouts from last week so we can, because I didn't have them last week. So if you didn't get those, you can go through what we talked about last week. It's on those slides in that PowerPoint presentation. So we're going to now the third section, and it is the section Tathhir al-Najaasaat. Tathhir al-Najaasaat. Okay. So Tathhir al-Najaasaat means cleansing impurities, or to purify remove impurities. Okay. So Al-Imam Ash-Shawkaanee rahimahullah, al-Mu'allif, the author of the book, he says, وَيَطْهُرُ مَا تَنَجَّسَ بِغَسْلِهِ حَتَّى لَا يَبْقَ عَيْنٌ وَلَا لَوْنٌ وَلَا رِيحٌ وَلَا طَعْمٌ والنعل بالمسح والاستحالة مطهرة لعدم وجود الوصف في المحكوم عليه وما لا يمكن غسله فالصب عليه أو النزح منه حتى لا يبقى للنجاسة أثر وَالْمَاءُ هُوَ الْأَصْلُ فِي التَّطْهِيرِ فَلَا يَقُومُ مَقَامُهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنٍ مِنَ الشَّارِعِ. So he says in this section, that which has become defiled with impurity is cleansed, it's cleaned by washing it until the impure thing is removed. Till the impure thing itself is removed. He's telling you how to remove. We talked about An-Najaasaat. So now he's saying, how do you remove Najasat so that you can utilize whatever the item is you want to utilize? Okay? How do you remove the Najasat? So he says that whatever has become defiled by impurities, the Najasat, it becomes pure again by washing it, so that nothing of the substance impure thing remains on it. Okay? And he says, and also such that it's the color of that impurity is removed, and the smell of the impurity is removed, and the odor and taste are also removed. So if you wash something that gets impurity, let's think through an example. Let's say there's some dog feces gets on your shirt some type of way. You fall, you're playing at the park, okay? Maybe you're at the park, it's the Eid picnic, you're playing a game of pickup football or soccer, Kurtul Qadam at the Eid picnic at the Centennial Park, and you're running and someone's passing to you and you slip and you fall, you land in some dog poop. It may happen, okay? Some people, they don't, pick up behind their animals. So that's on your shirt now. It's impure. It's dung. It's animal dung. It's impure. So when it's time to pray, if we have to make salah at the park, you can't pray with that shirt on, okay, or in that garment. You have to remove that impurity, okay? So how do you remove the impurity? So he's telling you, it must be washed, okay? It has to be washed. And it must be washed until the dung itself is removed, and the color of it is not there, and the odor and so forth are not there anymore. The traces of it are removed, okay? So he says also, وَالنَّعْلُ بِالْمَسْحِ. So he says, and sandals or shoes are cleansed of impurity by wiping them on the dirt of the ground, by wiping them. In other words, taking your foot and wiping, like for example, if you get let's say that same incident happens, but let's say you didn't fall in the feces, but it's on your shoes. You stepped in it, like, man, I just stepped in dog poo, So to remove it, you don't have to wash the shoe with water before you can pray in that shoe. He said it's removed by al-mash, which means wiping it, rubbing it off in the dirt, wiping that off of the shoe in the dirt. No, all those things don't apply because there's a dalil, there's evidence. The reason he's saying this is there's a hadith that proves this, okay? That you just wipe the shoe on the ground. There's a hadith where the Prophet was mentioned, if one of you comes to prayer, and he should let him turn his his shoe over and check if there's impurity. If there's impurity, you can wipe it off in the ground. Wipe it on the, masa, wipe means rubbing it like this on the ground, okay?
Nowadays, it's very hard to really take out everything because there is...
Yeah, the little grooves and stuff in there. Yeah, and that's not a condition anyway. So this is an exception. This thing he's talking about now, this is an exception to the rule because the basic rule is that you use water to purify something, to clean something. But for this, the Prophet ﷺ, the Sharia of Islam has given us a rukhsa, which means a lightened exception to the rule. The normal rule is you have to wash the thing, okay? But for shoes, it's very likely that you could step in anything that's impure. And so to make it easy upon us, the Sharia, the legislator has said, you just wipe it with the dirt, and the dirt will purify it. Okay? I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't know who raised their hand first, I'm not sure. Okay, go ahead.
The poop and the blood, they still have a kind of light brown. You cannot clean completely and get rid of all the color. So you can still use it as color?
As far as I know, according to what he's saying, those things have to be removed. They have to be removed. But the reason, now I'm speaking scientifically, okay, I'm not speaking that Allah said this or the Prophet said this, but the reason for that is because those are protein stains, okay? That's protein, okay? It's when you study organic chemistry or biochemistry, you learn about protein stains are harder to remove than things that are not organic or protein based, okay? But it still can be removed. It can be removed. There's certain stain removers you can get to remove it. But the basic rule is, though, if the impurity, as he said, and we go back to the previous slide, that which becomes, وَيَطْهُرُ مَا يَتَنَجَّسَ بِغَسْلِهِ حَتَّى لَا يَبْقَ عَيْنٌ وَلَا لَوْنٌ وَلَا رِيحٌ وَلَا طَعْمٌ. That which has become defiled with impurity is cleansed by washing it until the impure thing is removed, and its color and its smell and odor and taste are also removed. Okay, so technically, according to the law, the code of the lettering of the word of the lettering of the law, then those things should be removed. Those things should be removed from it before it becomes considered pure again, tahir again. Okay.
Technically, the water only, you will not be able to clean.
Yeah, and you can use other things if you, I mean, that's.
If you have,
Yeah.
like the example you gave in the park, technically, then you cannot.
Yeah, you may just have to remove. You just have to remove that shirt and pray in something else until you can get to a washing machine. Yeah, because you're not going to be able to. I see what you're saying. Like if it's a shirt that you're wearing and you're at the park, you're not going to be able to take it to the water fountain and get all the stain of the poop out, unless you do it really fast. I mean, you have to remove it really quick. But if it's on there any length of time, it gets into the fabric of it. Then more than likely you're just going. You can. I'm not saying you can't wash the shirt. You can, but you're just going to have to do a more intense washing than just taking it to the water fountain and doing like this. You know. You may have to, be putting spray some stain remover on it and put it in the washing machine. All right.
What about the taste? It's kind of difficult to tell whether it tastes.
Yeah, for that, yeah. I mean, I think that's in reference to something that you actually would eat or drink, like water. But yeah, I don't think you have to go sucking on the shirt to see if you can taste poop. So generally, if you see it, you don't see the stain anymore, and you can't smell anything on it, then it's inshallah, it's fine. It's tahir, it's pure. Oh, you had a question? I'm sorry.
I said that you have sandal, but you got in a waist or something, and some part going to your touching your feet. I mean, in the sandal. So at that time you go and wash.
Yeah, if it's touching your feet, you have to. What's on your foot, you have to remove it. If it's on your skin, you have to wash that off. But the shoe itself, if it's just a sandal, you can just wipe it on the dirt. But if it's on your foot, you have to wash this off. Yeah, that's a very good question. Okay, so that's an exception.
Excuse me?
No.
Because of this, are you going to, after what breaks wudu, because of this presence, then would break wudu?
No, because it's not min nawaqid al-wudu. It's not from those things. And we'll get to those things. It's one of the sections that's coming up, those things that break wudu, and that getting feces on you is not something that breaks your wudu. No. Okay, and so he says, wal-istihala. وَالْإِسْتِحَالَةُ مُطَهِّرَةٌ. This is something that pay very close attention to this, because a lot of Muslims do not know this. Some of you, when I explain to you what this is, you probably have never heard of this. Okay, it's something, a hukm, something that's called al-istihala. Okay, and it means the changing of the physical properties of a thing. This is a form. It's mutahiratun. It's a form of purifying it, due to the lack of its original impure characteristics being present. He said, لِعَدْمِ وُجُودِ الْوَصْفِ الْمَحْكُومِ عَلَيْهِ, because it doesn't have its original characteristics anymore. So what is this saying? This is saying that if something, an object or a substance, goes through some type of change, chemical or physical change, whether it's by burning it or doing something to it, such that it goes through some type of reaction where it changes, the state of it changes to something else, and we know it no longer has the characteristics of that former thing. It doesn't look like it. It doesn't smell like it. And if it's food even, it doesn't even taste like the original thing anymore. Okay? And we don't even call it that thing. We change the name of it. Then that thing becomes pure by istihala, meaning it's no longer considered the original thing. Do you all follow me? I will give you an example. A lot of Muslims avoid, here in the United States, they've picked up some books, haram food products or whatever like this. Some of these books you can find online at these so-called Islamic bookstores. Haram food products. And there's Skittles in there, and Starburst, and M&Ms, and Doritos, and you just go on and on and on. Everything is haram. Why? It says there's lecithin in it. There's monodiglycerides in it. There's triglycerides in it. Blah 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 blah. On and on and on. All these things. There's gelatin in it. All these things they name. Okay, and they say, well, these things came from animals, and even sometimes they may even come from a pig. The origin of these substances. Okay, those things are not haram to eat. It's not haram. Yes, even gelatin. The scholars have given ruling. Even gelatin is not haram to eat.
What about the enzymes?
It's enzymes. these things are no longer the origin of what they originally were. They're no longer the origin of what they originally. It went through a process called al-istihala, meaning we no longer even call it what we used to call it. We don't call it pork or pig anymore or lard. We call it something else. Customarily, what we call is no longer called that anymore. It doesn't even have the properties of that thing anymore. Okay, it's gone through a chemical change such that now it's considered something else. Okay? Then in the hukm shar'i, the religious rule of it is that it's not that thing anymore because it doesn't have its characteristics anymore. Not the taste, not the color, not the odor, or even the name. We don't even call it the same thing anymore. It's changed. That's istihala. And he says, al-istihalatu mutahhiratun. This istihala, it is a purification process. If something was impure before, and it goes through istihala, what it becomes is considered pure. It's not that original thing anymore.
So
okay?
When people make compost from refuse, animal feces or whatever, they make compost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Doesn't that still stink though?
Yeah, it stinks.
So, still smells like crap to me.
Similar to this process you mentioned?
Well, I mean, like I said, one of the things of istihala is that those properties have to change. Mm-hmm. The color, the odor, the taste, all those, and we call it. Now we may call it compost, but if it still smells like crap, it's just crap, So I'm saying it has to go. Those characteristics are no longer. That's why he says. لِعَدْمِ وُجُودِ الْوَصْفِ الْمَحْكُومِ عَلَيْهِ, because the characteristics of the original thing are no longer there. Adm wujud means that those characteristics no longer exist in this thing anymore. Okay, but if the characteristics still exist, then it's still that thing. It still has the hukm, the ruling of that original thing. Okay, so that's the point of it. He says the reason that istihala is a purification thing is because it makes the description of that thing, the characteristics that it had when we considered it impure, are no longer there anymore. So therefore, it doesn't get the ruling of that original thing. So you understand? So no.
Warm compost, if the compost itself, it is the warm food.
Right. That's why I say even if we may call it something else, but if those characteristics are still there, this doesn't apply. The characteristics have to be removed, and then if we call it something else also, then yeah, we say it's something else. Okay. So I just know when and I'm not an agricultural person. I'm a dentist by trade, but I just know when the landscapers at the medical center where I work, when they're putting out the stuff at the seasonal to get prepared for that stuff, man, is. Yes, if that's compost, that stuff is not. That can't be pure.
The non-natural one, which is like chemicals.
Right. Yeah. So Allahu Alam, I would say if someone has more knowledge about these agricultural things than me, then you can look into that. But the ruling, the principle, learn the principle, and you can always derive the ruling. Even you don't have to even go asking, a big fatwa for it, if you know the principles. That's why as Muslims, we should be people of principles. We should not be people of chaos and just blind following. We should be people who establish our religion. A lot of the things we should know from our religion just based upon fundamentals, learning the usul, the qawa'id, the principles of the religion. And this is something that is a principle. So if you understand the concept behind the principle, you can apply it across the board to whatever situations you may come across. Okay. Yeah. Well, because, the knowledge of Islam, like we talked about signs of the Day of Judgment back, the knowledge of Islam is, it's much less now than what it used to be. I mean, most Muslims these days, and I don't, mean to be negative about my own people because I'm speaking as a Muslim, but most Muslims in these times are ignorant. They do not study, and I don't mean just here in the United States. I mean in the Muslim countries, in the Muslim lands. Most Muslims do not study Islam. Just because someone is from a Muslim country doesn't mean they have knowledge of Islam. Okay, that doesn't mean that. I mean, I would say from my travels. And I lived in 3 different Muslim countries, visited 4 different Muslim countries. I would say the majority of the common lay people I came across in those lands were more ignorant of Islam than the Muslims here in the United States who are converts. I mean, I'm not saying that to put them down. I'm just saying it's just the reality. The reality, al-haq wal-haq yuqal. The truth should be said. Most they don't know very basic, very hardly anything. Barely know the basics of Islam. All they know is their culture. Okay. They just know their culture and what they see everybody doing around them. But as far as like, well, do you know the proof of that? Do you have this book in your home where you can show? No. I mean, a lot of them people don't even pick up the Quran. Many people aren't even praying, making salat, let alone studying fiqh and sharia and tafsir and, ulum al-hadith. No. They're barely making salat, in the Muslim lands. I'm not talking about United States and Britain and Canada. I'm talking about in the Muslim lands, okay? So the knowledge has become less, just as the Prophet said, and al-jahl, ignorance is muntashir, is what has spread. That's the common thing. Is most likely when you come across a Muslim, they will not be very knowledgeable of their religion. Okay, I'm not saying everyone. I don't want to pick a stereotype, but I'm just saying for the most part, usually, what I found is that most Muslims are not very knowledgeable of Islam, even the basics. Like this is a basic principle in fiqh. Most Muslims have probably never even heard of this. You understand?
Because the books that are out there say something else.
Yeah, well, I mean, what books? I mean, this book has it in here. This is what books are they reading? I mean, the books of the scholars, the real books of Islam. Now, I don't mean these, books written by Johnny Come Lately, the engineer who, at Columbia or whatever, who wrote a book on Islam but never studied it. I mean, the books of the scholars, the ulama. These principles are there. They're mentioned, but people aren't studying Islam from the scholars. They're studying Islam from YouTube and Facebook and stuff, or they're not studying with the scholars, So they're just hearing qeel wa qal. It was said, and did you hear? I heard that, that's what they're getting. Islam, type of Islam, quality of Islam they're getting, not the real, what's from the original, source works. Okay. So, but anyway, so this is a principle that you should understand, that al-istihala is mutahhiratun. This thing of istihala, it will purify something. It will make it be considered pure. And then he goes on to say, وَمَا لَا يُمْكِنْ غَسْلُهُ. I'm sorry. No.
How about concentration?
What is concentration?
About alcohol?
What about concentration of alcohol? Alcohol is it is impurity?
Yeah. How about, for example, inside of syrup?
Oh, you're saying alcohol like that. Well, okay, let me say this. We're getting off the topic, but I'll just say this, and then let's try to finish this, and then at the end we'll ask those miscellaneous questions. But this is a good question, though. Alcohol has many different types. Okay, alcohol has many different types. Now we say alcohol in general as common lay people. This is the word we use for it. But technically, when you study biochemistry and organic chemistry, alcohol has different types based upon how many carbon molecules are there and where is the hydroxyl ion. And this is something that if you study organic chemistry or biochemistry, you'll know what I'm talking about. But there's something called a hydroxyl group that will be added. Yeah, OH, thank you. Well, that hydroxyl group, where it is based upon how many carbons are there, that determines what type of alcohol it is. There's methyl alcohol, methanol, ethanol. There's different, isopropyl, propyl. There are different types of alcohol based upon how that chemical structure is put together. All of them are not the same as drinking alcohol. You understand? They're not the same things. They are poisonous. If you drink them, you will die. But it's not. Right. Yeah, exactly. The others, like isopropyl, that's rubbing alcohol, they call it. Yes, you kill you. It's poison. It's haram to drink it, not because it's intoxicant, because it's poison. It's sum. It'll kill you. It's not made for consumption, not because it will get you drunk. It's not khamr, okay? But it is something that is poison, okay? It's toxic to the human being, okay? It's toxic. It will kill you if you consume it, all right? So that's why it's haram to consume rubbing alcohol, all right? So also there's alcohol that's in the fuel, the gasoline we use. There's a type of alcohol in that. I want to say it's methyl. I can't remember, but it's not the same as drinking alcohol. It's not the same as Johnny Walker and Hennessy and stuff like this. It's not the same. Okay, it's not the same. All right. So for this reason, some of the scholars just being safe, they said don't even use perfume. Tib, atar, that has alcohol in it, like cologne that has alcohol, they say don't use it, right? Or mouthwash they say don't use it, because it has that name alcohol. But others who are muhaqqiqun, who did more deep investigation to this, of them I'll give you an example, like Sheikh Muhammad Umar Bazmul. He's a professor at Qura University in Mecca. In his book, he has a book dealing with I have it at home. I'm trying to remember the title of the book, but it deals with these issues where there's a difference of opinion in these fiqh matters, like we're talking about. And he talks about all these different issues where there's a difference of opinion about these things, and breaks down what's it's called al-tarjih, I think it's called a tarjih, where he looks at tarjih means what is the most correct statement in the issues where there's a difference of opinion. Okay. But anyway, regarding this issue of alcohol, he said those types of alcohol that are not intoxicants, that are in perfumes and colognes and things like that, he said it's permissible to use them for two reasons. Number one, it's not the same thing as drinking alcohol, and it's not an intoxicant. Okay, so that's one thing. The other point he made about it is that some of those scholars, they said that it's not permissible to use it because they were under the opinion that khamr is najis. Alcohol is an impurity. Like Ash-Shawkaanee mentioned here, we talked about that, the verse where Allah mentions that alcohol and Islam and ansab, these things are rijsun, okay, they're impure, a verse in the Quran, all right? So he has the same opinion that Imam Ash-Shawkaanee said, that this najasa of khamr is najasatun ma'nawiyatun. It's figurative impurity, not literal. Meaning if someone at the baseball game spills some beer on your arm, that's not najis. It's not the same thing as them passing urine on you. It's not najis that you have to wash it off before you can pray. It's something impure, meaning that it's disgusting in reference to us as Muslims because Allah forbade it and we wouldn't want anything to, we wouldn't want to consume it. But physically in itself, it's not the same thing as being impure like those Najaasaat that we mentioned, okay? So he said for this reason, it's also permissible to use it, to put on you. If it has fragrance in it, it doesn't harm, okay? All right. And he's not the only scholar who said that, but I'm just saying that there's a difference of opinion about it. But the rajih, and I agree with him, the correct view is that there's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing wrong with it, And now it's not correct to consume it because it will kill you. It's poison, but not because it's an muskir, we say. It's not an intoxicant. It won't get you drunk. It will kill you. And I know because when I was living in the Middle East, I remember some kids, some youth, that was in the news one time, they bought a bunch of perfume, cologne from the marketplace, and they wanted to try to get drunk, and they drank, and they died. It killed them. Because they were just going off, well, it's called alcohol, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same type of, different chemical composition, all right?
Then the same thing that you can get in Persia about mouthwash, about rice vinegar,
Yes.
and all that.
Yeah, if it's not the type of alcohol that is intoxicant, if you find out that it's that type of alcohol that intoxicates, then you should try to find something else, substitute it with something else. But if it's not of the alcohol that's of the intoxicating nature, that it's an intoxicant, then it's permissible to use it. It's permissible to use it. All right. Allah Ta'ala a'lam.
Flavoring would fall into the category of the Doritos and Skittles and all that stuff.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I've heard of things about the vanilla extract or whatever having some alcohol in it, but I don't know what type of alcohol that is. The other thing that I've heard discussed is that when you use it to cook, the alcohol gets burnt off anyway. It evaporates. It doesn't. It evaporates. It doesn't remain in the food substance. So I've heard that it's permissible based upon that it's, But in reference to what type of alcohol is in vanilla extract, I don't know. So I can't speak on that because I don't know. I don't want to tell you all something wrong.
This way, then they can use even the wine in the food when they have so many recipes.
Allahu a'lam. I would avoid it. If wine, something that's clearly, purely, we know wine is an intoxicant. That's clearly, we know that's something that's going to get you drunk. I wouldn't cook with that. I would avoid cooking with that because we know that's the type that's talked about, referred to when we talk about khamr, and that's it. So crystal or whatever, that stuff. Rum cakes and stuff. Yeah, I would stay away from that because that's the type of that's the intoxicating type. So anyway, inshallah, let's continue here. Okay, so he says, "Naam, فَمَا لَا يُمْكِنْ غَسْلُهُ فَبِالصَّبِّ عَلَيْهِ." So that which cannot be washed, then it is cleansed by pouring water over it. Okay, أو النزح منه, or to remove it, removing the impurity from the object or the garment or what have you. حتى لا يبقى للنجاسة أثر, until there is no remnant of the impurity remaining on the object or substance that you're trying to clean. Okay. So he's talking about cleaning methods, all right? And he goes on to say, وَالْمَاءُ هُوَ الْأَصْلُ فِي التَّطْهِيرِ, and water is the basis for cleansing. فَلَا يَقُومُ غَيْرُهُ مَقَامُهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنٍ مِنَ الشَّارِعِ, and nothing else takes its place except with a permission from the legislator, meaning the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. Okay, so water is the basis for cleansing things. Okay, water is the basis. So even in our cleanses, let's say for example you're washing clothes, yeah, you can put sabun, soap in it. There's nothing wrong with that. But water is also there. There's water in it. There's water. You're not just putting your clothes in the washing machine and only soap powder. There's water getting involved to activate the cleansing process. Okay, so water is involved in this in the cleansing process as a basis. We always consider that water is the basis of as a cleanser. It's the basis for cleaning, purification. Okay. Exceptions, like he says, except if there's illa bi idnin min ash-shari', except if there's a permission from the legislator, meaning the Quran and the Sunnah. Meaning, like for example, like the Prophet allowed wiping the shoe on the ground to cleanse it. That's an exception. There's been an exception. There's an authentic hadith to support that. Okay, so when those exceptions like that, also there's in reference to the skin of, like for example, pig skin or whatever. This is purified by the tanning process. By drying it in the sun and taking it through the tanning, that's a means of purifying it. There's evidence for it. There's a hadith to support this. Okay, so in other words, you don't have to wash it. It can be purified if it goes through that tanning process. It's considered pure. Okay, all right.
And you can be,
Yeah. Well, even though today those footballs they make, that's no longer pigskin like in the old days. Hope you all know that, right? This is not pigskin anymore. But even though let's throw around the old pigskin, but it's no longer really being made from pigskin anymore. But if it had gone through that tanning process, it's considered pure. It's considered pure.
yeah, and then there is the leaves and rocks that when in the old time they would go to the restroom and then they clean themselves with the
Right.
leaves and all rocks. Right.
Right. Yes. And there's evidence for it. The prophets always mentioned that, and we're going to talk about that. That's the next thing. We're running out of time, so let me just here.
Wash. Pouring water over it, is it washing?
No, that's like, for example, if it's on the urine on the ground or something like that. You can't necessarily wash and scrub. It's just pour water over it and it's fine. That cleanses it. Okay. Something that's not like, there may be something you can't pick it up and put it in your washing machine. You know what I'm saying? Like impurity gets on. Let's say you have a deck at your house. There's a deck. Okay. All right. So you can't wash it the same way you would take something and put it in a container and scrub it. It's too big to do that. It's not feasible. But pouring water over it, is he saying, that's sufficient to clean it. That's pouring water over it. It's sufficient to clean it.
The dalil is that the person came to the masjid and
Yes, excellent. That's one of the evidences he mentions. The man came to pass urine in the masjid al-Nabawi, and the people rushed. They were going to grab him and beat him up or what have you. And the Prophet said, leave him alone, let him finish. And then after he finished, the Prophet ordered them to pour a bucket of water over the place. Okay. He didn't say, scrub and whatever until you don't see anything and smell anything or taste anything. He said pour water over it, and that's sufficient. Okay? Sabbul ma, pouring water. Okay? Ahsan, very good. That's excellent. Okay, and there's examples of some cleaning going on, just in case you all don't know what we're talking about. Okay, so the next thing, Bab Qadhaa al-Haajah, the section on etiquettes of using the restroom, and we'll try to rush through this because of time. But he says, على المتخلي. The mutakhalli is the person who's using the restroom. الاستتار حتى يدنو من الأرض والبعد. So it's obligatory upon the person who wants to relieve himself or herself to conceal themselves until they squat down near the ground or wherever they're going to use the restroom. Okay? And al-bu'd means they must go away from others. Meaning you don't stand in the middle of people and relieve yourself, All right, like some drunk person. All right? You go away from people. All right, like this. All right? And so then he says, أو دخول الكنيف. Or they must go, or they enter into a concealed toilet area, like a stall or outhouse or porta potty, something like concealed. You either go away from the people or go in the area where people cannot see you. That's the point. Okay. And he says, وَتَرْكُ الْكَلَامِ. The next thing he says, وَتَرْكُ الْكَلَامِ وَمُلَابَسَةِ لِمَا لَهُ حُرْمَةً. So the person must also avoid speaking to others while relieving himself or herself, and avoid wearing anything considered that has hurma, sacredness. Like, for example, a ring that has Bismillah on it or something like that. It's the etiquette, you should remove it or take it off or put it in your pocket like this if you're going to be relieving yourself. All right? Or like you don't carry a mushaf into the restroom with you while you're mushaf is a copy of the Quran. Sitting on the toilet reading the Quran like it's a newspaper. No, this is not from the etiquette of Islam. You don't do that. All right? And he says, وَتَجَنُّبُ الْأَمْكِنَةِ, and staying away from the places التي منع عن التخلي فيها شرع أو عرف. Those places that the Islamic law or custom has prohibited us from relieving ourselves in those places, then we avoid those places. For example, like the Prophet mentioned, not relieving oneself under a tree in the shade where people will have to sit, or in the pathway, the walkway, the tariq where the people have to walk or pass by, or in the water that people have to use. Okay, you don't relieve yourself in those places. Why? Because it bring about the curse of a curse on you, meaning people will curse you even after you're gone. And they come and they see you like they curse the person who left it. So you bring about the curse upon yourself. Of the people, meaning people cursing you. So avoid relieving oneself in those types of places. All right. And then he goes on to say, he says, وعدم استقبال والاستدبار للقبلة وعليه الاستجمار بثلاثة أحجار طاهرة أو ما يقوم مقامها. So he says the person must avoid facing the Qibla, the direction of the Kaaba in Mecca, or turning their backside toward it while passing waste, while relieving themselves. This is based on an authentic hadith. And he says the person وعليه الاستجمار بثلاثة أحجار طاهرة, and the person must perform dry cleansing with, as she mentioned, like in the old days, people use stones or whatever they can, with 3 stones, or he says, or with whatever can be substituted for them. And the scholars say using warq al-hamam, that's fine. Toilet paper, they say it's fine. It does the same thing. You don't have to go use a rock. If we have toilet paper available, and I remember, funny story, I'll make it real quick, but I remember this is the day I accepted Islam. The day I took Shahada, it was myself and 3 other friends of mine. We were high school students. We had just graduated from high school. And so we were the first time ever in the masjid. And the people are giving us da'wah, And we came to the masjid wanting to be Muslim. That was our purpose. We wanted to accept Islam. We found the masjid in the telephone book. We didn't even know a Muslim to tell us where. We looked up the masjid and went to the mosque so we can accept Islam, And so they went on talking about you have to eat with 3 fingers, and when you step in your house, you have to step in with the right foot, and when you go to the bathroom, you have to step in with the left foot, and don't go in the bathroom unless you have a kufi on your head, and all this stuff they were going through, And we were like, how do we become Muslim? And then the guy told us, he said, and you have to wipe yourself with your hand. If you have toilet paper at home, throw it away. He said, because this is the smear campaign. This is not for Muslims. Muslims don't use toilet paper. He said you have to either use your fingers of your left hand or go outside and find a rock and clean it off and keep it in the bathroom and wipe yourself with the rock.
Oh my God.
So, this is a true story. I'm not making this up at all. Well, this happened to me. This is not something I heard about. This happened to me, So, we go home, after all of that. Eventually, someone decided to give us shahada. Eventually, we're like, well, can we still be Muslims? Yeah, so give us shahada. So the next day, I'm talking to one of my friends, and I'm like, so did you get up for prayer this morning? And he's like, man, he said, I can't be a Muslim, And I was like, why not? He said, did you hear what they said? You have to wipe your butt with your with your hand, or use a rock. He said, you know what my mother will say? Because he's 18 years old, he's still living with his mom. He said, you know what my mother will say if she asked me what's that rock in the window, and I tell her I used to wipe my butt. He said she'd throw me out the house. So this comes from ignorance. The point of this whole story, true story from the files. But the point of me telling you the story is this is from ignorance. It's ignorance. That is not calling someone to Islam. That is not giving da'wah to Islam. To call someone to Islam is to tell them about La ilaha illallah. Tell them about who is Allah, what is Tawheed, what is shirk. Stay away, to warn them from shirk and call them to worship Allah, not to tell them they have to wipe their behind with their fingers. And it ran the man away. He left Islam after one day because of that. And he said, you going to do that? I said, well, no, my man's not to that level yet. I said, I have to get some Ad-Durar, I have to get some proof. But I knew I still wanted to be a Muslim. I said, I'm not going to leave Islam. I said, maybe that guy didn't know what he was talking about. Alhamdulillah, Allah gave me common sense even back then as an 18-year-old. I had common sense enough to know that, well, let me read more about that. I didn't see that in the pamphlets, So, but
And you saw our bathrooms. What do you consider bathrooms? When you go in, the whole thing or just the stall?
The stall actually is the place that is considered the place where you should if you're using this is the thing. Some people think that based upon these narrations about not talking while relieving oneself, they think that, oh, when you step in the bathroom, you can't say anything, you know. So you see people that go into the bathroom and you give them salam, like out here where the sinks are, you know, salam alaikum, like, astaghfirullah, you know, give you a mean look or something like this. Now, that's not what the hadith is talking about. It's talking about in the Qadhaa al-Haajah, when you're actually relieving yourself, sitting on the commode, relieving yourself. You're not supposed to talk. But in the sink area or whatever like this is, you know, this probably cleaner than your house. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, you know, talking in that area, what have you. That's not the same thing, you know.
But the houses where the bathroom is like this.
Well, if the toilet is, I mean, if you know that the place is facing the Qibla, and actually in the notes here, he talks about that there's no difference between whether a person is outside or inside. Some people say, well, if you're inside, that's okay, you can face the Qibla, whatever. Some have said that. But Imam Ash-Shawkaanee, he held the opinion, he said, no, it doesn't matter if you're outside or inside, you should not face the Qibla when relieving yourself or turn your back to it when you're leaving yourself. You should try to face in the opposite direction. And based upon a hadith of the Prophet, where he said that the person should not make istiqbal of the Qibla, or istidbar, which means turning your back to it. And he said, so therefore, he said, sharriqu aw gharribu, you know, which means face the east or the west. Talking about from Medina. He was talking to the people in Medina. Because for Medina, the Qibla for them, if they face the east or west, that was not the direction of the Qibla. If they face the south towards Mecca, then that's the Qibla. That's istiqbal al-Qibla. If they face the north towards Sham, then that's istidbar. That's turning their back, their dubr, to back side to the Qibla. So he told the people in Medina, he said, sharriqu aw gharibu, face the east or face the west, to keep them from violating this principle of not facing or defecating towards or passing urine towards the Qibla. Okay, like this. So let's see. No.
Yeah, another question. You know we always have access to water. Is it sunnah as water to cleanse yourself in the drawing? Sometimes is it sunnah recommended something?
We're going to get to that. Inshallah, we're going to get to it. We're going to get right now. This is the next thing he's going to talk about. Okay, so he says regarding the talat al-ahjar, okay, cleaning oneself with 3 stones. This is called istijmar. Okay, this is called istijmar, dry cleansing. Okay, cleaning yourself with something dry, like a stone or something dry, paper or something that's dry. Okay, to use water, this is istinja. Istinja. This is to use water. Okay, and he mentions in the notes that al-afdal, the best, is to use water. Istinja is better than istijmar, but it's permissible to do istijmar even if water is present. He said even if water in the hudur al-ma, the istijmar is jaiz, is permissible. Okay, meaning to use dry cleansing and not use water, even if there's water present, it's still permissible. It's acceptable. There's nothing wrong with it. It's valid as a cleansing process. But al-afdal, that which is better, is to use water. It's istinja. Okay, you all understand? Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, he gave a fatwa saying that to combine between both of them is best. He said to combine between both of them is best. We're going to stop with this. We're at the end anyway. To combine between them is best. Sheikh al-Albani, rahimahullah, he disagreed with that. Sheikh al-Albani, the muhaddith, Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani, he said that he considered this a type of bid'ah, to combine between istijmar and istinja. He said because there was no dalil of the Prophet recommending it or doing both of them together. So Sheikh al-Albani was a literalist. He was zahiri in this. He said you should stick to the text, either do istijmar or istinja, one or the other. Sheikh al-Albani said there isn't, not authentic. To do both, he said there isn't. This is what Sheikh al-Albani. He mentions this in his book Tamam al-Minna and Takhrij al-Fiqh al-Sunnah. Okay, he said this is the book where he talks about this, saying that it's not an authentic evidence to combine them.
The Prophet, referred to people of a certain area because they actually clean themselves with water.
Right, because they clean themselves with water.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fine. But he's saying to do that and istijmar together, he said there's no dalil for this. That's what Albani said. Sheikh bin Baz said, just based upon using the reason, he said it would seem to do both is better. To do istijmar and istinja. Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, he said it's better to do both together. Okay? So moving on, because the time is almost up, he says, وَتُنْدَبُ الْإِسْتِعَاذَةُ عِنْدَ الشُّرُوعِ وَالْإِسْتِغْفَارُ وَالْحَمْدُ بَعْدَ الْفَرَاغِ. So he says it's recommended to seek refuge with Allah upon entering the place of the toilet. Okay, entering the place where you relieve yourself, where you say, "A'udhu billahi min al-khubuthi wal-khaba'ith." Okay, I seek refuge with Allah from the khubuth wal-khaba'ith. And the scholars there, in explaining this, they said this is the male and the females of the jinn, shayateen. Okay, I've heard some saying that there's no real evidence saying specifically that's what it is, and they just said it's two types of impurities. The two types of impurities, al-ghayat wal-bawl, you know. But others, they said that this is talking about the males and the females of the shayateen. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, Allah knows best. But it is authenticated from the Sunnah to say this dua in the dukhul al-hamam, you know, when you're doing Qadhaa ul-Haajah, you know, the place where you're going to fulfill your, you know, relieve yourself. And then seeking forgiveness upon leaving. When you finish, you say ghufranak. You're seeking forgiveness. And then he says, walhamdu ba'd al-faragh, praising Allah after finishing. But the sharih, the explainer Muhammad Subhi Hassan Hallaq, he said there's no dalil for that. There's no evidence for saying alhamdulillah after using the restroom. Even though Al-Imam Ash-Shawkaanee is saying it, he doesn't have a dalil for it. And the explainer, the one who did the checking of the book, he said there is not any evidence for it, and I have not found any evidence as of yet to say that you say alhamdulillah after using the restroom. But you do say ghufranik. There's authentic hadith to support this, to ask Allah's forgiveness. And inshallah ta'ala, that's it. There's a porta potty. I prefer the one at the bottom. You know, that's me. I'm soft. I'm a soft guy. I'm westernized. But these are, you know, just places where you relieve yourself. You all understand that. So, alhamdulillah, inshallah, we'll stop. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.